Dear student friends, I am Dr. Godbole Mahendra Tukaram, welcoming you all again in my today's super lecture. So the super lecture is supposed to be a sequel of the yesterday's lecture. It is a remaining portion of the yesterday's living diversity of the living organism or the animals, plants and microbes on this planet of the earth. So we know, although the Carl Linnaeus is supposed to be the father of the taxonomy, he was associated with the classification of the plants and the animal kingdom, but whose classification has many limitations. Therefore, the International Union or the Council of the Nomenclature has been rejected his classification. It is because of there were many limitations. He has avoided the most important kingdoms like the Monera and the other microorganisms, bacteria and so on. Those are very, Streptococcus bacteria and Titiano bacteria. Those are supposed to be creating a jaw lock disease. Okay, so these kinds of the limitations, while considering, the council has been rejected his classification, and the Carl Linnaeus classification was based on the two kingdom classification. This is supposed to be the Plantae and Animalia. In the Plantae and Animalia, the bacteria and other, the bacteria's classification was avoided by him, but the algae, the protozoans are supposed to be the unicellular organisms, and their extension has been given by him up to the mollusk, right from in porifera, where the body is supposed to be asymmetrical. Those are exclusively marine. So it was the characteristics of those porifera and Coelenterata, bodies coelom, and then nematohelminthes and so on, up to the mollusk or the gastropods. There was one branch of the classification and another branch of the classification based on the Plantae, from the algae to the Thallophyta. So from an algae to Thallophyta means those species were very primitive. Their body was very simple, and very few species towards the end of his classification, it shows that the presence of the xylums and phloem. Later on, the history of the two kingdom to five kingdom classification. The five kingdom classification was proposed by the Whitaker, and this system of the classification is anonymously accepted by the Council of the Nomenclature. Now, the two kingdom of the classification, it is known to us or it is known to you, but the classification was initiated by the Aristotle before the Carl Linnaeus. The classification was classification was initiated by the Carl Linnaeus. So what is the need of the classification of those animals, plants and microbes and so on? It is because of those are very important aspect for agriculture, for pesticide, for pharmaceuticals, and so many important biomedical applications are there. The three kingdom classification was also initiated by Ernest Haeckel, and later on the Monera was also included by him. The kingdom fungi was also included by this second scheme of the classification. Now, while talking about the Carl Linnaeus, he has started the foundation of the nomenclature of the systematics. Systematics means itself is a classification, and Carl Linnaeus in the 1735 he has given the cornerstone for the classification of the different kingdoms, maybe the plants or Plantae or Animalia. Okay, it was in modern biological, and his classification was a modern somewhat. What are the importance to understanding the diversity and the basic taxonomy or the systematic? So the classifications scheme is very essential for the medical, agricultural, pharmaceutical and environmental science. Nowadays, this is also important for as far as the concern of my presentation. This presentation will be helpful for you student for to qualify any national or international medical licensing examination apart from the NDA or the Armed Forces examination. So while talking about the diversity of the living organisms and going ahead with the next scheme of the classification, this second scheme of the classification was worldwide accepted, and who has given or who has proposed this system? That Whitaker has been classified, and at the bottom he has started the Monera. Monera means those are very primitive organisms, primitive microbes Okay. Listen, what the Whitaker has done, he has shown some linkages between the every individual kingdom. How the Monera were started to developing the Protista and the fungi. The Monera to Protista. Protists are very important to understand the those are the vectors. Different diseases can be transferred by those microorganisms, and then fungi, those are from the heterotroph, those are the heterotroph, and those are producing, means the Monera were producing asexual reproduction. The Protista may show the linkage between the eukaryotes and prokaryotes. They may reproduce either asexually and sexually. Therefore, it is a linkage between the fungi or the, you know, the animal developed animals or the plants or animals and the Protista. There is a linkage. Now, animally is a eukaryote, eucellular, and the autotrophs. While talking about the plantae, the animalia are supposed to be the heterotrophic, and the plantae are supposed to be the multicellular and autotrophs because of the presence of the that is the kitchen inside, as the biologists call it, as the plastid as a kitchen. While talking about somewhat brief introduction about the Robert Whitaker, he was also he was born in December 1920 to 1980. It was the span of his work, and he was the ecologist, and he was also awarded the different awards, American plant ecologist, and he was also the first to propose the five scheme of the five kingdom classification. He was proposed by him. He has also proposed the Whitaker bioclassification, which was categorized biome types upon the two biotic factors, that is the temperature and the precipitation. The temperature and precipitation as a the physical or the physico-chemical or environmental factor was also considered by him. On the basis of he has also classified, and he was proposed the concept of the alpha diversity, of the beta diversity and the gamma diversity. Many the biological work has been carried out by him, and this is the the summary of the classification of this Whitakers. He has classified these his five scheme of the classification by keeping the six important concepts. The first one was a characteristics of the every individual kingdom. The characteristics followed by the all five kingdoms, maybe the Monera, Protista, fungi, plantae, and animalia. Take an example of the Monera. Those are the prokaryotes, but the Protista are the eukaryote. Protista may produce asexually and sexually, both type of the reproduction. Now, while talking about the cell organization in unicellular, the Monera is supposed to be very primitive and unicellular. That is, sometime the Protista, Monera is a unicellular, but Protista is a multicellular. Means the Protista is a linkage between the Monera and the fungi. Okay. Next is the plantae. All plantaes are the eukaryotes. No plant is supposed to be a prokaryote, and no plant is supposed to be heterotroph. It was the main scheme of the classification. All are also multicellular, and animals are, although they are the eukaryotes, but they are the heterotrophs. For the nutrition, they are supposed to be depends on the plants. The next character was the cell organization. Cell organization was also multicellular in animals. The next point was the cell wall. Of course, in case of the Monera, the cell wall was present, and it was present in both the cases in Monera and the Protista. While talking about the fungi, it was also present, and the plant or animal cells. While talking about the animal, the plant cell is present only in the plant, that is the cell wall is present in the plant, but the cytoplasm or the plasma membrane is present in the animal cells. The mode of the reproduction, asexual mode of the reproduction was existed in the Monera, while Protista were able to sexually and asexually produce. They were able to produce their progeny by sexual way or asexual way. In an asexual way, okay, in an asexual way, there was a budding and fragmentations, and so many things were present. asexual and sexual. Asexual and sexual things were also, in the plant also, because some of the plants can be produced by the vegetative propagation, and that vegetative propagation itself is supposed to be a sexual mode of the reproduction. While talking about the animals, though mostly animals are supposed to be producing by the sexual reproduction by means of the process of the formation of the gametes. It was the base for the classification of the 5 kingdom by this Whitaker. And the different examples are given. The Monera means the bacteria. Their example is a bacteria, cyanobacteria. The Monera is supposed to be a bacteria, but all the bacteria are not the cyanobacteria, because the bacteria earlier, Archaebacteria, has engulfed the cyanobacteria as a blue-green algae, and then it becomes mature to synthesize its own food. Okay, so this was the the modification of the bacteria to the from the bacteria to the modern animals. So this was the scheme of the classification. So it was all introduced to you about the cell biology or cytology, how the phagocytosis and the engulfing of the foreign material has been engulfed by the different small 0.5 millimicron size particle was engulfed by that pre-existing Archaebacteria. This is the diversity of the living organisms. Here I am going to giving in detail about the modes and the nutrition, the importance of the Monera. That is, the Moneras are supposed to be important, and the examples are also given here. Modes of the nutrition. The mode of the nutrition is the the autotrophs, heterotrophs, parasite, and symbiotic. Moneras may be parasitic mode of the life they can adopt. They may be the symbiotic, the symbiotism, how the pre-existing cell as an Archaebacteria has engulfed to the alpha protobacteria, and after the engulfing of the alpha protobacteria was acting as the powerhouse of the cell or the mitochondria, and this is a symbiotic relationship. Parasite, most of the Moneras are supposed to be parasite. Either they can live in the stool, they can be reside in a different tracts, okay, in a digestive tract or in the colons of a different living organisms. Then heterotrophs are the saprophytes, and those are also depends on the external organic materials, because the moist environment is very important. Then autotrophic way is also denoted by the incidence of the light on this small organelle on the and the formation of the food material. The importance of the Moneras, the enrich of the soil. What are the applications of the microbiology in the soil science or in agriculture? The microbes are very important, since the process of the formation of a very thin veneer or very small layer of the soil, it took millions of the years. And microorganisms are also playing an important role for the nitrogen cycle, the importance for the food and in curd, in a different industries. Fermentation also, that microorganism, the Monera, may be used for the production of the antibiotics, or the different kinds of the medicine can be synthesized by those organisms. Methanogens play a vital role in the sewage treatment. Different kinds of the the effluent, either from the industries or from the cities discharge, can be treated by those organisms. And some fixed atmospheric nitrogen, that is rhizobiums and nostoc, those can synthesize the nitrogen by fixing the oxygen from the air, and those may be occur on the almost different dicotyledon plants nodules, maybe on the different dicotyledons. While talking about the Whitaker's kingdoms of the classification, all those are supposed to be the cell types, and it was already done. Now this is while talking about the classification that union of the classification, that is International Union of the Botanical Nomenclature and International Union of the Zoological Nomenclature. Okay, this scheme of the classification is based on the generic or the phylogenetic character has to be considered. For example, the Homo sapien, the Homo sapien, the Homo sapien is supposed to be, the Homo sapien name has to be written the capital H, and the sapien must have to start from this smaller one. Okay, we will talk about the plant kingdom at the end. Okay, this was the earliest classification of the Whitaker. This is the next point which was considered by the Whitaker as the fourth point of the classification, that is a kingdom plantae. He has classified the plant kingdom on the basis of the presence or absence of some vascular system in the plant. Some primitive plants like mosses and others were lacking all those vascular system for the the transportation of the food and nutritionals and all water to the different branches of the plant. The plant kingdom is further classified into the subgroups, and this classification based on the following criteria. What kind of the criteria was considered by Whitaker? The plant body in the presence or absence of the differentiated plant body, that is root, stem and leaves. Earlier plants were lacking the roots, that is in modified plants can only have the root systems and the leaves, but other plants don't have special root systems. Vasculation or the vascular system was also considered, either the presence or absence of the vascular system, and seed formation is also very important concept, was also included by him. On the presence or absence of the flowers and the seeds, and he has classified either the naked seeds or the closed seeds. The naked seeds example is a gymnosperms, and the closed seeds example is the angiosperm. That was also a criteria for the classification. Okay, while talking about the different plant kingdoms has been classified into the 5 subgroups according to the above mentioned criteria. There were many criteria has been evaluated. Many criteria was considered by Whitaker to classify the plants. Either the plants are supposed to be a primitive plant, or the plants are supposed to be the angiospermics and well developed plants. In only angiosperms you can find such a all developed characters, but in Thallophyta you cannot find developed roots and flowers, and in fruits formations cannot be produced by the thallophytes. Thallus means very simple. Structurally it is a very weak. Thallophyta lack a well-defined body structure, and the plant body is a thallus, like an example of the Volvax and Fucus pyrogyra. These are the examples of the Thallophyta. While talking about the Bryophyta, there is somewhat advancement from the Thallophyta to Bryophyta. Okay, in the Bryophyta you will see the vascular tissues are prominently present in the Bryophyta, and the plant body has a roots like stems and a stem like and the leaf like structure. Not exactly the roots and stems, but it looks like somewhat exact their appearance morphologically, those are like the roots and the shoots. Example is the Marchantia, Funaria, and other examples are given here. Now the Pteridophyta, we are going to looking some modified characters. The Pteridophyta means those are well developed and differentiated plant body, roots, stems, leaves, and they have a vascular system. And examples is a Quistums and Pteris. Pteris, these are the examples. You will see these kinds of the structure in different aquatic mode of life. While talking about the gymnosperm, gymnos means the naked. Those are not closed seeds. It may be appear in this gymnosperm. Gymnosperms have a well differentiated plant body. Body is well differentiated, but the body is having, naked seeds. That is, the seeds are not enclosed within the fruit. Seeds are unprotected, and the example is a Cycas, Pinus, and Epi and Phaedra. Ephedra is the example of the those are the Himalayan plants. You can find those in a less temperate region. We're talking about the angiosperms. Angiosperms may be the dicotyledon and monocotyledons, and many species are available. In case of the angiosperm, the seed is those are seed-bearing plants and well-differentiated plant body. The seeds are enclosed within the fruit. For example, the mango and rose and tomato, onion, wheat, maize, and so many examples we see in our day-to-day life. Okay. The cryptogams and phanerogam is one more criteria to classify the plants. The plant kingdom is also classified on the basis of either the cryptogams or the phanerogams. The cryptogamy and phanerogamy, it is based on either the flower produced to produce the flower and not to produce the flower. The non-flowering and the non-seed bearing plants we can call as a cryptogams, and the flower and the seed bearing plants are supposed to be the gymnosperms and angiosperms. We can also make a one class for them, and that class is supposed to be phanerogams. Phanerogams means the food and seed bearer, while the cryptogams means the non-flowering and non-seed bearing plants. While talking about some anomalies or some problems which are associated with the microorganisms, many farmers and their many crops are supposed to be destroyed by those epidemic or sometimes maybe combined attack by those organisms. For example, even we the human beings is also going to suffering by the different kinds of the problems. For example, the cholera, typhoid, citrus canker, and the tetanus, that is a lockjaw, and other impacts. What are the impacts? What happens in the tetanus lockjaw? Some microorganisms, especially the tetanus, also known as a lockjaw, the man or the person, whoever is going to suffering by those organisms, small bacteria attack, he may suffer very seriously, and that may attack potentially fatal bacterial infections for the central nervous system. And due to the attack on the central nervous system, the human organs, maybe the hands and legs and the jaws movement may be locked, and that is a very dangerous disease, and the nervous system cannot work properly, and those bacteria, that is clostridiums and titanium bacteria, which releases a potent toxin and that attacks to the nervous systems and causes the painful rigid muscle spasms. The attack of those microorganisms may destroy the movement of the different muscles or the bones. While talking about this citrus canker, all the family citraceae, okay, the family citraceae, those are having a different species, and those citrus can be, that citrus canker, it is a highly contagious bacterial diseases, and it is affecting the citrus varieties caused by the bacterium Xanthomonas citri, and it is characterized by raised and the corky canker-like lesions, and the yellow halos may be developed on the fruits and the leaves. So because of that attack on the leaves and the fruits of the family citraceae, the farmers cannot get proper monetization in a market. Okay, economically, those organisms, especially from those protists, are very dangerous. Okay, while talking about the cholera is also important, it can also be caused by the microbes of the protista, and that is also, cholera is an acute and threatening intestinal infection caused by the bacterium Vibrio. That bacterium Vibrio is also belonging from the same Protista, and the typhoid is also caused by the same group of the family. Okay, so it was all about the detailed instruction about that, the classification of the eukaryotes, their habitats and reproductions, nutrition. It is already introduced to you students. So this is all about the morphological features and characteristics of the Monera. Monera is also a unicellular one, and they are having the 7S ribosomes, okay, which may produce and synthesize the proteins. This is the cell wall, bacterial cell of those are supposed to be a kingdom Monera, and it is having very simple structure. There is no boundary between the cell cytoplasm and the nucleoplasm. There are different kinds of the Moneras are existing on the basis of their size and shape. They are classified as, they are the spherical, those are the diplococci, those are the quamas like structure, those are cylindrical, okay, Triptococci, Bacillus, okay, and Vibrios. These are the different structure can exist. So again, it is a Whittaker classification. The classification of the Monera is classified. The Monera is classified in 3 categories. Okay, those are the Archaebacteria, followed by the another, that is Eubacteria, and Eubacteria is supposed to be a true bacteria, and third one is the Cyanobacteria. You will see the autotrophism in the Cyanobacteria from Protista or from the Archaebacteria to the Cyanobacteria. The autonomy in the sense of the development of the photosynthetic activities was took place, and therefore we can say there was a linkage between the protist and the eukaryotes or the true bacteria. These are the individual characteristics. What are the Archaebacteria? Archaebacteria are very ancient, and those bacteria may sustain at a very great temperature. Some bacteria may be present in the ruminating organisms. For example, in cow and in other cattle, you will see those organisms may be present in such a high temperature. Sometimes thermophili. There are some bacteria, those are the thermophili, they can also sustain at 110-degree temperature. Okay, and few bacteria, they can also acquire their mode of cosmopolitan nature to survive in every situation. In hot spring, they can also, that is a thermophili, and mostly they are they can also withstand in a mushy environment where the less temperature is there. Some bacteria may adopt for how to sustain in a less temperature, and the cell wall and cell structure is differentiated, and those are helpful to survive in an extreme condition. While talking about the eubacteria or the true bacteria, the cell wall is rigid and made up of the peptidoglycans. Peptidoglycin is only present in the eubacteria, but other bacteria is not having the same chemical components. It moves with the help of the flagella. These are the flagella. These are the locomotory organ. Flagella means locomotory organ, and those are only present in the earliest organism in Archaebacteria. But we the human are having a well developed forelimb and legs and hind limbs and forelimbs which are well developed in us, and in other organisms the locomotory organs are well developed, but here the cocci and the diplococci, those are having very delicious, very simple structure of the locomotion. While talking about the cyanobacteria, those are also known as blue-green algae. Blue-green algae is able to synthesize its own food, For example, the nostoc and Anabaena. Blue green का नाम जो है वो है Anabaena and nostoc. Okay, this was all about the classification of the Whitakers. Okay, this is also in very brief the shape of the bacteria, maybe the cocci to cyanobacteria. There was one question about the microbes. If the prokaryotes are having the nucleus and within the nucleus there is a thread like material is there and that is DNA, and in microbes there is no nucleus but nucleotide is there. So this is entire region is supposed to be a nucleotide, although it is not looking like a nucleus, but this is a nucleotide where genetic material can be inherited from parents to offspring. Okay, cytoplasm is surrounded or cytoplasm is existing around the nucleotide, plasma membrane and cell wall. This is all about the size. So this is the last slide and we will stop here. The plantae, those including the eukaryotes, multicellular and autotrophic organism. What is a plantae? Plantae means the autotrophs. It is because of the presence of the plastids. The plant cell contains the rigid cell wall. Plants have the chloroplast and the chlorophyll pigments. The plastids may be different, maybe leucoplast and chloroplast and chromoplast. Okay, so many plastids can exist. They can also give the shape, they can give the coloration, different, maybe the green, and sometimes the different stainings may be possible by them to the corollas. Okay, the corolla may be a calyx followed by the epicalyx. They are the non-motile and they are make their own food. Okay, that is another one important feature, that is a chloroplast. Chloroplast is also important. Okay, this is the plant kingdom. Plant kingdom was xerophytic from a thallophyte to angiosperm. This was all in detailed scheme about the classification of all 5 kingdoms.